If your idea of embracing individuality is letting people pick their own screensaver, we need to talk. Welcome back to the Folker Lab podcast, where we try to rescue leadership from buzzwords, vibes, and mandatory fun events. In this episode, the last one in this leadership series, we're going to tackle one of the hardest things for organizations to do well, creating a place where actual human individuality is welcome, not just tolerated, and where unity doesn't mean we all cloned the boss. In the last episode, we talked about leaders who understand the priority of people by valuing and appreciating them, not just extracting work from them. Today is the logical next step. If people matter, they can't only matter as a generic group called the team. They have to matter as individuals with different strengths, different styles, different ways of thinking. Most leaders will nod and say, "Oh yes, people are our greatest asset." Fewer leaders can tell you what that means for how they design their systems, structure their meetings, and build their culture. Historically, leadership hasn't always been friendly to individuality. Early 20th century management thinkers often treated organizations like machines. The mission was best accomplished by reducing variability in how people acted, thought, and expressed themselves. If everyone behaves exactly the same, it's easier to measure and control. Followers became interchangeable parts. This is where you get the fantasy that the ideal worker is a pair of obedient hands with no inconvenient brain or personality attached. More contemporary researchers have pushed back on that model. They argue that making more space for individuality and creativity doesn't hurt effectiveness, it enhances it. Values and goals still matter, but the demand for rigid uniformity and conformity gets dialed down. Instead of chasing sameness, they chase unity around the mission. The idea is simple. We can be deeply aligned on what we're trying to do while being wonderfully diverse in how we contribute to doing it. The catch, of course, is that creating space for individuality takes more effort from leaders. It's easier to manage a room of clones than a room of real humans. But the potential rewards are bigger. When you create a place where individuality is not only allowed but encouraged, you unlock ideas, energy, and initiative that a stay in your lane, follow the script culture never sees. It's the difference between running a machine and leading a community. Unity is still critical. No organization functions well as a bunch of disconnected free agents doing whatever they feel like. But unity is not everyone thinking the same thoughts or functioning in the same way. The lesson argues that organizations function most effectively when the diversity of people and their talents is acknowledged and encouraged, and when unity is built around core values, shared vision, mission, purpose, and goals. Forced conformity crushes creativity and individual contributions, and eventually effectiveness. Unity doesn't require sameness. It requires a shared why and where, with room for a different how. When core values and a shared mission provide identity and direction, something rare can happen. Unity of effort and autonomy of action at the same time. People are aligned on what matters, and they're free to use their gifts to pursue that mission in different creative ways. Without that shared allegiance, you don't get individuality, you get fragmentation. You get everyone pursuing their own agenda with no common story. That's where distinct leadership gifts come in. The lesson says those gifts exist for equipping and edification. Equipping means giving people the training and resources they need to succeed. Edification means that because of that equipping, the organization thrives and reaches its potential. It's not a paradox that diversity can unify an organization. Most organizations have many purposes, which means they need a diversity of people with different gifts to accomplish all of them. If everyone thinks like you have one very strong capability and a lot of blind spots. Servant leadership fits this model well. A servant leader doesn't just know the team in abstract. They strive to know each follower personally, their strengths, their gifts, their style. Contemporary research backs this up. Leadership that prioritizes the individual by creating space for individuality is associated with better and more effective leadership practice. Statements like, People within this organization accept people as they are, and people within this organization allow for individual style and expression, turn out to be significant predictors of healthy leadership environments. This connects nicely with situational leadership too, which you might remember from earlier in the series. That approach says leaders should adapt their style to meet the needs of each follower. It assumes followers are different levels of competence, different levels of commitment, different forms of motivation. By doing that, leaders automatically create room for individuality. They stop treating everyone as a generic FTE and start treating them as specific humans who need different kinds of support. Now let's get practical and slightly uncomfortable. The lesson asks how we humanize the machine of industrialization. Henry Ford created the modern assembly line in 1913, which was brilliant for improving the consistency and quality of production. But it also had a dark side. There's that famous Ford quote, "Why do I always get the whole person when I want just a pair of hands?" That line perfectly captures the tension. Organizations often want the output of a person's work without the complexity of their humanity. It feels efficient, but it slowly degrades the people and the culture. So here's the question. Do we truly value diversity and individuality, or do we secretly prefer to be around people who look, sound, think, and talk like us? It's a human impulse to be comfortable with similarity, but that preference has consequences. It affects how effective our organizations can be because it limits the range of ideas and perspectives we're willing to entertain. It also affects, for those of you with a faith dimension, how well we can bring others to Christ, because we may unconsciously expect them to fit our cultural mold first. The lesson also asks whether we understand the need for unity of purpose while enabling autonomy of action. That means creating room for different people to pursue the same goal in different creative ways within the bounds of shared core values. One person might solve problems by building a spreadsheet. Another might do it by walking around and talking to everyone. Another might sketch options on a whiteboard. Instead of forcing everyone to adopt one approved style, leaders can say, "Here's the mission. Here are the guardrails. Within that, bring your best self." So what does it look like, day to day, to create a place for individuality as a leader? First, you stop pretending you can have people's gifts without their quirks. The pair of hands fantasy has to go. People come with history, personality, culture, and style. You can either fight that complexity or design your leadership around it. Creating space for individuality means choosing the second option. You decide that knowing people, not just their job title, is part of your leadership work. Second, you build systems that recognize difference instead of punishing it. If every meeting is built for the loudest extrovert, you're going to hear from the same 3 people and miss the thinking of everyone else. If every evaluation is based on one narrow, personality-coded model of professionalism, you're going to confuse cultural comfort with competence. Leaders can ask, where are we confusing sameness with unity? Where are we enforcing a style when what we actually care about is outcomes and values? Third, you dial down the fear of non-standard contributions. When someone approaches a problem in a way you wouldn't have done it, your first move doesn't have to be, "That's wrong." It can be, "Tell me how you're seeing this." That doesn't mean every idea is good. It means you're open to being surprised. Creating a place for individuality is partly about training yourself not to flinch every time someone colors outside your lines. Fourth, you explicitly affirm individuality in the context of shared mission. It's one thing to say, "We value diversity" in a policy document. It's another to say to a person, "The way you think is different from mine, and that's one of the reasons this team is stronger. Here's how your uniqueness is helping us pursue this goal." People remember those comments. They're also more likely to keep bringing their full selves to the work when they know it's welcome, not just tolerated. Finally, you view leadership as equipping and edification, not control. Equipping means you give people what they need to succeed in their way, not just your way. Edification means you build others up so the organization can grow into its potential, not just so your metrics look good this quarter. When you do that consistently, individuality stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a resource. As we close this leadership series, this episode ties the whole arc together. We started with followership, looking at how the way you follow shapes the way you lead. We explored leadership theories, moved into modeling what matters, wrestled with honest self-evaluation, talked about fostering real collaboration instead of fake teamwork, and dug into valuing and appreciating people. This last piece, creating a place for individuality, is where all of that becomes deeply human. If leadership is going to be more than slogans and slide decks, it has to show up in the way people experience their daily work. Do they feel seen as individuals? Do they have space to bring their gifts? Are they aligned around something bigger than themselves without being pressured to become clones of whoever happens to be in charge? Those are the questions that will tell you whether you've created a place for individuality or just printed a poster about it. This is the Fokker Lab podcast. Thanks for walking through this leadership series with me. My hope is that as you lead, whether that's in an intel shop, a military unit, a nonprofit, a business, or a faith community, you'll take these ideas and pressure test them in your real context, with your real people, in all their non-standard, entirely human individuality. I'll see you next week.